Again. Hi, welcome. All right. It's amazing. I've done so many of these events and I still haven't got the text down. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's hope that this is working. Again, it's so strange how I always have problem trying to figure out where the chat is. Uh, could could you guys let me know if you could hear me okay? I don't see the comments, which is strange. Um, anyway, I'm gonna just continue anyway, and then we'll figure this out. Hopefully this will come up soon. But anyway, today I wanted to come in and talk to you guys about the 5 common ways that targeted parents accidentally contribute toward parental alienation. I want to be very clear that I am not at all supporting the idea of victim blaming. I know that as targeted parents that you are truly the victim of domestic violence. So, this is a form of psychological abuse, and it is truly abusive and traumatic for what you are going through. So this is not intended as a form to blame you in any way. Alicia, hi. Octavia, hi. Jane, thank you so much. Great. Oh, Octavia is from Mexico City. I didn't know that. I've seen you on some of these live events before. Thank you for coming back in. So anyway, like I said, I'm not at all about victim blaming. So this is not about trying to placing blame on you. But what it is that with parental alienation, because there's such a lack of awareness, we as targeted parents, a lot of the time, we don't even recognize what we are looking at and what we are seeing. And because of the lack of that understanding and awareness, sometimes we will accidentally do things that that is a natural sort of reaction that will cause further damage into the problem. So I wanted to talk about 5 of those. You let me know if these things seem familiar or if you can think of other things that may have made it worse for your situation. So let me know. Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Zian. Wow, Zian is calling in from Mumbai city in India. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much, you guys. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to talk about is inaction, because we are in denial. So the first thing is that a lot of the time we might be seeing, and really for parents, when you go deep into it, like when you get far into parental alienation and you're in such a deep situation and you look back, you will see that you have seen signs of parental alienation a long time ago. You've seen different things that's going on, maybe things that the alienator have said. It may be things like your children that have said, maybe things in your children's behavior that you have seen. But because many reasons, it could be because you were traumatized with the breakup with the relationship with the alienator. Sometimes it's usually because of a divorce or separation. It could be because you were going through the custody battle that is already traumatic as it is. So we get into a denial stage that we don't want to recognize how serious these problems are. So because of that, there's an inaction in our part. There's a lack of action in our part, and that's one of the common way. And because we're not doing, because we are not taking actions, things just fester on and fester on, and things get worse over time. And that's one of a very big thing, is that when it comes to parental alienation, we actually have to be proactive. We have to take actions really every day. So the inaction is really one of a big thing that inadvertently contribute toward parental alienation. When I look back at my personal situation, really, this, I could say parental alienation has started years prior, before I finally recognized that it's such a big problem. And for me, I used to just think to myself that, oh, this stuff, let's not worry about it. Let's just focus on being a good parent. And it will just solve itself out. My ex will just let go and maybe will recognize it, or, that his action won't lead to anything. And that is such a naive way of being in denial, because the potential damage is huge. And a lot of you probably recognize that now, how serious the consequences of parental alienation is, and how like the consequences are, and how long term it can be. So if we don't take action, this can just get really, really bad. So Sarah in the chat room, she's from Sydney, and she said it gets worse over time. It definitely does. And if we don't take action, and so that's a problem. The first thing is a lot of us are in denial especially at the early stage of parental alienation, and we did not take appropriate actions early enough. So that's one thing. Okay, the second thing I wanted to talk about is reaction. So some of the manifestation of the alienated children, actually all of them are really traumatic and really painful. The children are behaving in ways that are not themselves. So you are used to your children who are loving, and you love your children, and you knew your children. But now you have these children that are cold and rude, that don't want to participate in family time with you, that talk back to you, that talk bad about you. You may catch your children spying on you. So you see these sort of behaviors. And instead of recognizing these are children, your children are victim of abuse, that children that are under influence of parental alienation, under the influence of brainwashing. So we sometimes will react to the children. And so handling these children requires special skills. And the first thing is awareness and education in your part. And if we don't have that, the natural reaction is just sort of like reacting to your children's behavior. So a lot of parents will maybe scream at the children, punish the children. Maybe you feel hurt, so you shut down on your children. You don't talk to your children. You may go, oh, if you don't want to see me, I don't want to see you. You don't want to talk to me, I don't want to talk to you. Things like that, right? So you could potentially make things a lot worse. And this is a big one. Reaction is really bad when it comes to parental alienation. Unfortunately, it's a natural behavior, because we are not used to seeing our children this way. We're not used to seeing our children being rude and cold and defiant. And so it's so important to be educated and informed when it comes to parental alienation. Now, in the chat room, Octavia said it's hard sometimes. If you fight at the court, if you fight to protect the right of your son, they blame you to keep the fighting. But if you don't fight, they look at you that you don't care. It's parental alienation is very difficult. I'm not gonna pretend to say that it's easy in any way. It doesn't matter how severe the level of parental alienation is. When you have a parental alienation case, it is difficult, and it doesn't matter what the situation is. You have to take a long-term approach. Now, the outcome, the happy outcome could happen really sudden and fast. And actually, a lot of them are that way if you take the right approach to solving parental alienation. But it's never a simple short-term thing. It's something that you definitely look at it with a long-term perspective. So Sierra said, my solicitor told me that I keep arguing with everyone and making too many complaints, that but yet there was inaction by all departments. I only stood up for myself, and no one in the legal professions like me pointing out evidence. I am so glad that you are fighting, Sierra. Really, it's unfortunate that there's this, I think the work by Dr. Stephen Miller that talking about targeted parents, they are characterized by what he called the 4A, because they are agitated, that they are, the typical, because you are under trauma. So a lot of people looking at you as if you are the problem. This is a natural response by our society, is to blame the victim, unfortunately, and it's terrible. So anyway, so like I said, the second thing is reaction. Now the third thing is us thinking that if we are being nice, that we somehow giving alienators leeways that things will get better. So the third thing is that we are walking on eggshells. We're not setting boundaries with the alienators, that we're giving in and thinking that, well, if I'm just giving a little bit, he or she may be nicer back to me, that maybe he or she will recognize my effort, that it's going to be appreciated in some way. Unfortunately, when you are dealing with parental alienation, you are dealing with an abuser. And an abuser is there's a power imbalance in your relationship, and you will never fix the problem by further pushing this power imbalance. So by you giving in and walking on eggshell and not setting boundaries, you are actually pushing this power imbalance further, and you feeding into the ego of this abuser. So really that doesn't help. And a lot of parents think, I just don't want to be mean. I don't want people to think that I'm mean, that I don't want people to think that I'm being difficult, right? Because of the situation that we just talked about a moment ago, which is people tend to blame the victims. So it's natural for you to feel like, oh, I don't want to be seen that way. But if you don't set the boundary, the alienator is going to just keep taking and making a lot worse, because any precedent that you set is going to be a mark for them to push further. All the time they're going to try to push the boundary because they're trying to take more and more from you. The whole idea of parental alienation is a campaign against you. This is a form of psychological abuse, and it's a form of domestic violence. Alienators is trying to harm you and using your child as a weapon. So they are going to do anything they can to further hurting you. So it's so important for you to find your power, to empower yourself and set the boundary, because the more you can take away that imbalance in the power imbalance in your relationship, the better it's going to be for you. So definitely is really important. Alicia says there's no trauma sensitivity in the family court system, unfortunately. No, the family court system don't care about trauma sensitivity. They don't care about how you feel. They don't care about your well-being. They claim to be about the best interest of the children. Sometimes they're okay at that job. A lot of the time, they're doing a really poor job at protecting the best interest of the children, unfortunately. Mary said, my adult children are so abusive during the trial, and I know that it's still not them. And I know the judges see it and they need help. So I'm praying that we get reunification therapy after they were made to lie for the last 16 years. I will not talk bad about them when I take the stand, but I will let the judge know how loving they once were before my false arrest. So Mary is calling from Canada, and she has a really traumatic situation. She was an adult child of parental alienation herself, and now as an adult, she became the alienated mother, and the children now are adult, and she's still fighting this. Unfortunately, it's not a short-term thing, and what she's going through is really huge, and I really feel bad for her. It's so heartbreaking. Monica said, I know that's so frustrating. Sarah said they protect the alienators in the family law court. It is not always the case. One thing though is that it's so important for us to recognize that the court system is like a foreign country, as in it's not how we think intuitively. It's not about common sense or how we think, or how yesterday we had a conversation about how it is not the justice system. It is the legal system. It's not just the justice system. As in, we can't just expect that justice will prevail. Because it's like a foreign language. That means that it has its own culture and its own languages. So if we get ourselves educated and learn the language and learn the culture, that way you can present your case appropriately. You can fight your case and you can be in a good place with the family court system. It's not always bad. It's but what I want to say is that it doesn't mean that it's easy. It's not automatic that the truth will win. It doesn't mean that as a victim you will always win. It's not easy. But it doesn't mean that it's always bad. It's about learning and recognizing that this is something that you have to respect, that is different. You have to learn the language and the culture and the rules, and it's completely different. And the translation, because it's a different culture, right? So when you're presenting something, imagine something that is considered a normal and healthy culture in the US can be considered really rude and inappropriate in Asia, for example. So the same thing with quote, something that in your mind as a common sense can be really normal or good, in quote, it could be really bad. So learning that culture and language so that you can present your case appropriately, so that you can fight for your children appropriately. Zian said our children deserve the love and care of both parents. They absolutely do. They do. There's no reason why they should lose a parent, especially someone like you who want to be there for your children, who love your children. And I say this all the time, which I truly believe in, which is the majority of the problems we are facing today in our society is because of we having a society of a lot of people like us ourselves carrying around baggage from our childhood traumas. And a lot of these traumas is to do with children that's raised by a lack of loving parents, or parents that are not there for them, or parents that have been removed from them, children like alienated children like our children. And so if we can fix this problem, then we could fix a lot of problem in our society. Because when you look at, a lot of politicians, a lot of leaders in society, a lot of business leaders, executives, bosses in workplace, a lot of their problem, when you look at it, really why they behave the way they are, and when they make really poor decisions, when they treat people really poorly, it's a lot to do with their childhood trauma. And really, if we can help bringing loving parents back to their children's lives, then we could save our society with a lot of these problems. Monica said exactly. Sarah said it depends on the judge and solicitors. Betsy said, thank you for the insight on the imbalance of power. I have tried kindness for years, and I like what you said about finding our power. Andre said, never give up. Nice to see you, Andre. I don't think I have ever seen your name in our chat before, so thank you for being here. Parents, if you are new here, let me know. I love seeing new faces. And if you have been here before, still, it's great to see you guys. And please like this video, please share, and let me know your comments and questions. I'm going to continue. So we talk about parents being in denial and inaction. We talk about parents that react because they don't know how to respond appropriately to the children. We talk about parents that don't set boundaries and walk on eggshell. So those are three. We're going to talk to the fourth one, which is parents that counter alienating. So it's kind of a natural thing where you see your children coming over, or when you hear people talking about your ex saying bad things about you, right? You hear these things that you go, that's terrible, that's untrue. I'm not that way at all. It's very natural to do the same thing by saying to the kid, well, but your dad or your mom was horrible. He or she did this X, Y, and Z, right? Or talking to your friends or family in that way. Say, my ex is bad because so we accidentally counter alienating, and the children have already been put in the middle of this loyalty conflict, in the middle of adult problems. And the alienators have already bombarding the children with these things, this brainwashing, this campaign of denigration of you. And so you have, it doesn't matter how evil, how bad the other parent is, you have to try your best to not put that on to your children, even though it seems such a natural thing to say, it's not me, it's your dad that is a lot worse, and he or she did this, and it's natural to do it that way, but we can't do it that way. That's mean that we also alienating our children from the other parent. As bad as it is, as as evil as the other parent is, we have to try our best. Go and seek refuge somewhere else. Get emotional support somewhere else. Get the release somewhere else. Don't put that on our children. Don't put it on the people that happen to be in the middle of you and the alienators. You might get therapists, you might have good friends, you might have support groups, you might have people here that are with you that understand this. This is a place that you can share, but don't do that where you become them, right? We can't step down to their level and participate in the behaviors that we don't condone. So really, that's the fourth one that sometimes parents accidentally participate in. If you have done some of these things that I talk about, don't beat yourself up. Be kind to yourself, be compassionate to yourself, because truly what you are going through is so traumatic and it's so painful. Really, it's really one of the most painful things that you could ever have to experience. So any reaction or any behavior that you have done is really just understandable. But because it doesn't help, it's important to be aware of that and to learn to change it. So that's the fourth one that I was talking about. Okay, the fifth one, the fifth one is about I'm gonna hold this one off for a little bit. Let's talk about some other things before we get back to that. Okay, I'm gonna just look at a few things in the chat room. So Andre said, never give up. Monica said, right. And we keep hearing the children are resilient. Zion said, people in a position of power most often abuse their duties and contribute to the circle of violence, which leads to disruption in gender equity. Do not give up on your children. Definitely do not give up on your children. Octavia said, I understand this is so unfair. Okay, thank you so much. And let me know if you have any question or anything like that. Okay, so the fifth one is letting go of yourself. Because what you are going through is so traumatic and you are in so much pain, and you think that I don't have my children. What is the point in my life? How could I enjoy my life anymore? How should I? And I don't deserve it, and I shouldn't be able to enjoy this, that I don't feel up to it. And you're letting yourself go. You're allowing yourself to let the fear and the helplessness overtaking you. Now, even though, like I said, it's a natural response, what you are doing there is you're not helping yourself, and in return, you're not helping your children. If you still have contact with your children will see how you are, and that doesn't help at all, because the alienators are painting a picture of you as an unfit, unhealthy, not safe, not loving parent. How can you love your children if you are so down and depressed? And how can you truly care for your children? And how can you fight for your children if you are not strong? So if you are still having contact with your children, anything that you are doing that not taking care of yourself will reflect on the children, and the children will see that as a validation of what the alienators are saying. And you definitely don't want to validate the false narratives that alienators are spreading to your children and to other people around. If you don't have contact with your children, you still have to live your best life because you need to be strong in order to fight for children. Even if you don't fight in court, the battle is a long-term battle. It's for life. And at some point, you will get your children back. So if you don't get yourself to be in the best form of you, in a form that your children can respect and admire and love, you need to be the best self so you can be ready to have your children back. So if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to be ready to have your children back. So don't let yourself become a wreck. Truly try your best to take care of yourself. Find the support networks that you need, find the therapy that you need, focus on other aspects of your life, focus on other people that's still there for you, educate yourself so that you can have the tools and figure out how to fight for your children. But definitely don't let yourself go. Don't let yourself down. So those are definitely important. Monica says, this is so incredibly validating. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. So those are the 5 things that I find very common in parents that inadvertently contribute toward parental alienation and make things worse. So I want, and I'm so glad that you are here. I really am grateful that you are here because that way that show me that you really are not giving up, that you are trying to educate yourself, that you're trying to find a way to figure out how to fight for your children. So really, whatever that have happened, that you happen to be participating in any of these things, and we talk about being in denial and not taking action. Let's see, what was the other one? Reacting to our children inappropriately, walking on eggshell and not setting the boundaries, accidentally counter-alienating, and letting go of ourselves and not taking care of ourselves. So those 5 things, if you happen to participate in any of those, it's okay. Don't be tough on yourself. Just pick up from here and changes. It's never too late. It's never ever too late. And any day is a good day to start on a great thing. So anyways, that's something I wanted to share with you guys today. Jane said, I'm grateful you are here too, Petra. Thank you so much, Jane. Let me know if you guys have questions. That's just the 5 things that I wanted to share today. Tomorrow, I wanted to come back and talk about, what was it? I was setting up an event, but it didn't work. So I will set it up in a little bit. Oh, yes. Tomorrow, I wanted to come back and talk about an emotional toolkit for targeted parents. So as targeted parents, because it's such a traumatic form of psychological abuse, and we have to carry on with our lives. We have to still taking care of our job and our other children and our family and everything else. But anything could be a very painful trigger, and we could have potential breakdown at any point. It's a normal thing because as targeted parents, what you are experiencing is very likely a form of complex PTSD. So the best way to prepare for yourself is to put together this emotional toolkit. And I wanted to share with you my thoughts on that. How do we, well, this is what I call it, an emotional toolkit. It's not a box that you can buy from the shop. This is something that you need to prepare for yourself. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that tomorrow to help recommend a few things that you can help prepare for yourself. These are just like my personal recommendation. Jane said, I've done all of these things over time and it's impossible to be perfect, but I've learned and improved. Thank you so much for your honesty, Jane, really. Actually, like I said, it's very common. These are the 5 common ways that parents inadvertently do. It's a natural thing. So, I'm glad that you hear that you you recognize that. Alicia said, I had to really face my grief straight in the face when my daughter was born. Years, no contact has been spent healing and being present with my daughter until I was really, truly ready to move forward. And Alicia is talking about her after her alienation, and she now have a new child, and she had to deal with her grief in the past of the alienation so that she can be fully present for her new child, her new daughter. And that's so important because sometimes we are so wrapped up in our pain and our grief and our trauma that we forget the people that are still here for us today. And a lot of the time, parents that experience alienation will impact other relationships in your life, and you end up with divorce and breakup and other problem or other kind of trauma. So it can translate into other things in our lives. And so if we can learn to control and manage that so that it doesn't have further impact in your life, because that's what alienators want. Alienators want you to suffer, and not just suffering from losing your children, but they want to destroy you. And so if you let it affect other parts of your lives, you're really letting the alienators win. You need to get your strength together and get out of the victim mentality and have the hero mindset to fight for your children, but at the same time protect everything else that is about you, that's yours. It's not up for the alienated to damage. So really, it's a very important part of our lives. Alicia said, now we are ready to go and bring Big Brother home. That's amazing. She's talking about getting her alienated son back. So that's very good. Okay, I don't see many more questions. So, if you guys have questions, I'm going to stay for a few more minutes. If there's no other questions, then I will go. But, if you have a question, now is a good time to let me know. Monica said, having to have so much control over emotions all the time is very stressful. It's very draining. It's exhausting. It's painful. I agree. Alicia said, my grief could have kept me from experiencing the joy of my daughter, my new daughter. Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that you're not allowing that to happen, so that your daughter deserves you completely, full of you, not just a broken you. Your new child needs you. So I'm glad that you could take care of your pain and your grief and put it aside so it doesn't affect your new child. That's so important. Lars said hi from Stockholm. Really good points. Thank you. Hi. I love Stockholm, such a beautiful city. Watch out if your basic reasonable rules stop working. Then you need to be closer to your child and not waiting on the sign to see what will happen. It might be a sign that the negative campaign is increasing, especially important for teenager, I think, looking back. Okay, I think you're talking about, I think Lars is saying that if you have reasonable rules to your teenagers, for example, don't use a phone while we're having family dinner, right? Things that are reasonable rules, and yet suddenly it stopped working. Don't just wait. So that's a good advice. This is to do with the first thing that we said about how parents sometimes are in denial. We see these things and we don't do anything about it, and then it makes things a lot worse. So if we see that kind of sign where things start to seem, these are reasonable rules, and suddenly your children are so rude and defiant over something that seemed very reasonable, it is a sign that there's a negative campaign going on. There's a campaign of denigration going on from the alienators. So that's a very good point, Lance. Thank you for sharing that. He said, I haven't emailed or communicated with my ex for the past 1 year because every time I email to check on my kids, he would email back 3 pages with lies and belittling me. So I stopped communication altogether. At the same time, I'm blocked by my kids on phone and social media, yet I send them a text every other day or once a week, hoping that they unblock me and read my messages. It's been 2.5 years I'm in court and there's no court order for custody. My older one is 19, my little one is 14. What should I do? My attorney has no clue about parental alienation, but I can't afford to get another attorney. Okay, Nikki, you don't have a custody order. So unfortunately, when you don't have a custody order, then the alienators are not violating the court order. So on the legal route, you sort of can't fight that. You're talking about fighting in court, and if you don't have a good lawyer that understands parental alienation, then and I hope that you have a court date soon, then obviously get yourself educated about parental alienation and then get your attorney educated as much as you can. If you can't afford to get a new attorney, like I said, we have done a number of interviews of lawyers about strategy to fight parental alienation in court. So I would definitely recommend watching those videos yourself, but also if you could pick out bits of those and ask your attorney to see those, because that is so important for them to understand how to fight this. I have a workbook on Amazon. It's called Diagnosing Parental Alienation, the 5-factor model. It's a workbook to help you document and structure your case so that you can present your case in court in a way that easier for people to recognize parental alienation. You don't have to use the term parental alienation. It's up to you. It depends on your situation in court. But if you present your case, and this is based on a psychological model that's being used by experts out there. It's called the 5-factor models. So if you can present your case in that structure, then it's natural for people to come to the conclusion that the children are being damaged, that the children are being brainwashed, that you are the victim of parental alienation, even if they don't recognize what parental alienation is. Octavia said, my son during video conference constantly turned to end the conversation quoting. He makes this very frequently, not to say nothing is good or bad. Oh, what you say seemed to be bad. I don't understand what you just said, Octavia. What do you mean by end the conversation quoting? My son during video conference constantly turned to end the conversation quoting. He makes this very frequently, not to say nothing is good or bad. I don't understand. Could you explain? Maritska said, Petra's workbook is fantastic. Thank you so much for your support. Really, really appreciate that. Nidhi said, every time I talk about parental alienation, the judge say it's a hearsay and no evidence. Yeah, so fighting parental alienation, especially if you don't have expert witness who can provide scientific evidence to show proof that the case is a parental alienation case, is very difficult for you. So potentially you may have to consider not using the term parental alienation and focus on what the ex does and what does it do to your relationship, your prior loving relationship with your children, and all these things. Like I said, the 5-factor model, you can present, but you have to focus. So a lot of cases that I look at when parents share with me and I look at their stuff, it's people forget how to present their case, and they, instead of focusing on what truly is fact and also what it is about the children, they because normally when parents go dealing with a parental alienation case, chances are you have like mountains of stuff going on, right? There's so many incidents and many things that was said and just so much. So how do you structure it in a way that focus on facts and focus on what matters to your children? Because you have to focus on the best interest of your children, and you have to focus on facts and evidence. So in order to avoid, being thrown out, that's sort of the focus that you have to do. You don't, like I said, you don't have to use the term parental alienation, especially if you don't have an expert witness. It's very difficult for you to be able to fight that, because this is a clinical term. So really it's harder for you. Blue Lake said, yep. Alina said, thank you for all your work. I have a corrupt judge. No matter what glaring evidence I presented, how can I fight this? So I don't know what is this is really you have to have a good lawyer. We have had a situation where we fought a judge successfully, but with that, it is to do with a judge that have been so corrupted that is not about you. But this judge had a pattern of behaviors, so it's multiple cases that the judge does the same things. So we were able to pull multiple cases and show this pattern of behaviors, and were able to do certain things with that. And we were able to do something with it. But it's challenging in terms of your personal case. Yeah, in terms of your personal case, really, it's about getting a good lawyer that help you fight, because I really don't know enough about your personal case and situation. Okay, Octavia said he turned off the conversation. So his son, when they have video call, the son turned off the conversation on Skype or dropped the screen. Yeah, this is unfortunately that's the problem, is that his son is now rejecting the relationship because of the influence of the alienator. Yeah, I do you have, Octavia, do you have physical visitation with your child at all? Like in terms of custody, do you actually have custody, or is that just video conferencing? Maritzka said, regarding workbook Petra, is there a way you could turn this into an ebook which can be downloaded and fill out and added to as we go? Maritzka, I'm fixing that. I know it's a lot of parents said, oh, it's something somehow not working. It's difficult for them to fill things out. So I'm fixing it because I honestly don't understand Amazon system so well. So we're gonna take it off Amazon and then figure out a way that much easier for you. So that's gonna come out soon, hopefully. Blue Lake said, I find the judges don't like the parenting undermining a parent-child relationship or not encouraging. So instead of using the term parental alienation, it really depends on the judge. There are judges that truly understand parental alienation. We have had events with judges that come on and talk about it, and they know the term parental alienation. We've seen many cases where judges that will not do interview with us, but still we know that they do understand parental alienation because we've seen the case documents and we know that they get it. So it really depends. But there are a lot of judges, unfortunately, don't recognize the term. So at the end of the day, you're right, Blue Lake, is you focusing on the child, because the ultimate thing is the court is about the best interest of the child. So if you can focus on the well-being of the child and how it impacting the child, focusing on that and focusing on fact and evidence, then your chance of getting your information through and getting heard is a lot higher. I've seen cases where lawyers spend so much, like pages and pages, talking about how the alienator was cheating on this parent, and the alienator was just trying to not paying child support. And you know what, judges don't care about who have to pay child support, or who's cheating on who. I'm not talking about like in terms of fighting for your custody. They don't want to hear about those things because those things are irrelevant. So if you're doing that, you're distracting from the essence of your case, and this is when it makes you looking like you're the trouble parents, and you're more concerned about money or the conflict with your ex instead of concerning about your child. So if you focus your case on the well-being of your child, and everything that you're arguing is about how it's impacting your children, that's the essence of your case. This is all about your child's safety and your child wellness. Mariska said you need to create a timeline that shows a pattern of manipulation and control over time, for sure. Octavia said I used to have it. I'm not sure what he's talking about. Mariska said, Blue Lake said, my teen refused to answer my court order phone time again last night. No response to text. His father doesn't encourage him, obviously. Yesterday we had an event that we talk about custody interference, which is to do with when you have a court order that said that you can have your children at a certain time and then you couldn't have, and this obviously also including phone time. And we talk about both the civil as well as a criminal route of pursuing this. So if you were not there, maybe check out the recording of that talk yesterday. We have Team Texas 2503, and they are not lawyers, they are not therapists, but they have been dealing with this a lot and help a lot of parents. So they have, their experience have been really helpful. So I would say definitely check that out. Mariska said the family court wants to assign blame to both parents in high conflict cases. And that's the things, right? When they say high conflict cases, immediately it gives the impression that both parents are problems. And when in fact, a lot of these cases, it's the problems are created by just one party, and then suddenly you being the victim getting blamed for this. And that's really a poor way of characterizing these cases. Mariska said they seem to be blind to the possibility that one parent could be solely or largely responsible for the issues. Exactly. The alienator's false allegation muddy the waters. Yes, false allegation is the whole, really, it's such a whole other animal. It's so dangerous, so difficult, so painful. So if you are a targeted parent and there was no false allegation against you, really count yourself lucky. It's such a common tool that alienators use because it's so effective. Unfortunately, it's so painful really to fight false allegation. Octavia said, I used to have visits of my son during vacations, but now with the pandemic, she blocks legally this visitation, arguing that COVID-19. My son is an American citizen, but lives in Tijuana, and I live in Mexico City. They argue my son is at risk because of COVID-19. I don't know the law in Mexico. In the US, the court have been very clear about how COVID cannot be used as the reason for interfering with custody orders. So I would say look into the law in Mexico and see what they say about it, because you would not be the only parent that have to deal with custody issues during COVID. So check it out. But really in the US, if you look at almost any states, they issue very clear statement that's saying, you know, COVID cannot be a reason to interfere with custody orders. Okay, thank you so much, you guys. Like I said, I'm gonna come back tomorrow and talk about the emotional toolkit for targeted parents. And if you have more questions, feel free to let me know in the chat room. Please like the video, please share it. And really, I'm looking for more questions so that I can come back and do more events. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about the toolkit, and then I found my notes. If you guys watched a few days ago, I did an event that talked about what family and friends can do to support targeted parents. I did that event, but I actually lost my notes for it, so I couldn't remember what I was supposed to talk about, but I found my notes now. So the day after tomorrow, I'm going to talk about that. I think the day after that, I want to talk about what should be included in a court order, in a custody court order. So those are the few topics that I have in mind for the upcoming events. But if you guys have questions for a particular issue or idea, let me know. And I think someone asked about reunification method. I will do some events on reunification method as well. So really, thank you so much. Like I said, really appreciate you guys. And I see you guys again tomorrow. Okay.